Good morning and welcome to our webinar, Building a High Performance Culture. It's Keith Ayers here, CEO of Intégro Learning Company and Intégro Leadership Institute. We have added to the slide here by creating a diverse and inclusive workplace. And there's so much talk about that going on at the moment and the importance of employees feeling like they belong. And I think that's a really important aspect of building a high performance culture. So what is a high performance culture? It's one where everybody is performing at their best. And I think I decided I'd turn my video off and I forgot to do that. I just wanted to let you see that it's the real me. So I don't want to distract you from what I'm saying, and not that I necessarily would. So a high performance culture is a place where there's high levels of passion and people being passionate about the work that they do and about the organization they work for. And we have a ton of research that really reinforces that, and I'm going to share some of that with you today. But on the subject of passion, I'd like to start by referencing my book. You may not know that I've written a book or published a book, and it's called Engagement is Not Enough, but the subtitle is You Need Passionate People to Achieve Your Dream. Now, I was doing the research for and writing this book back in 2005. The first edition came out in 2006, and then the second edition, which you see the cover of here, in 2008. And I feel that passion is so much more powerful an emotion than engagement. And yet most organizations are measuring engagement rather than passion. You might be asking, well, why did I go down the passion track? And I've talked to thousands of business leaders over the 40 plus years I've been doing this work. And one of the things I found was that the leaders who were most successful in creating a high performance culture were those that figured out that they needed to light a fire within their employees rather than lighting a fire under them. Right. And I'm stealing that line from one of our clients in the United States who said that that's what she learned by doing some leadership training with us, was how to light a fire within people, their people, not under them. And so one of the other things that I discovered whilst doing my research for the book was that there are 5 needs that ignite employee passion. And so I want to run you through the passion pyramid, all right, as a starting point. And I'm going to link that back to diversity and inclusion and belonging as well. So my thinking was that if you want people to be passionate about what they do, that you need to satisfy these needs. And if you don't satisfy these needs, people will be dissatisfied and be dispassionate rather than passionate, all right? And so after I go through this, you'll see how belonging and inclusion really fit into this. Okay, so the first need and the base need, and I put it in a pyramid format because the need to be respected is foundational, right? I know that you know that if you work for a leader who doesn't respect you, who doesn't let you know that they respect you, you're going to switch off to that person. You're not going to be really committed to doing your best for them, even though you may want to do your best for the organization. Okay, and so the way I've structured this this model is in the pyramid itself. As we go up, we'll see the 5 needs that everybody has, and we've got research that proves that. Well, pretty much everybody. It's not normal to not have these needs, in fact. And on the left-hand side, you'll see leadership skills up the top. So these are the skills that leaders need to have in order to satisfy the need. So if leaders are going to ensure that all of their team members, all of their direct reports know that they are respected, then they need to have the people skills necessary to build strong trust relationships with them. So people know that they're trusted and respected. All right. And then the payoff for the organization, and on the right-hand side, or the outcomes, is that when people feel respected, you're going to get a basic level of engagement. People are going to be connected, but we need more than that. The second need is the need to learn and grow. And that's an instinctive need. Anyone who's had a child would know that that little child from a very early age wants to get into things. As soon as they can get moving around, crawling, later on walking, they want to get into stuff. They're eager to learn, they're curious, right? So that's an instinctive need. Now, you may think, I know someone who thinks they know it all. They don't think they've got anything to learn. Well, I think that's a product of their environment, maybe of the culture, or maybe it's something that's happened along the way where they feel they need to convey that they know everything. But in actual fact, we can really switch that need back on if we create the right environment. And so the skills that leaders need to have to ensure that their team members are learning and growing is coaching, counseling, and mentoring skills. All right. It's not good enough just to send people off to training programs. And I've heard that many times from learning and development people, is that managers send people along to the courses and they expect us to change them. Whereas in actual fact, it's the leader in the workplace that's going to help people apply what they're learning by coaching, counseling, mentoring, etc. Okay, and the payoff for the organization, of course, as people learn and grow, is to have more talented, skillful employees. Okay, and every organization wants that. All right, so the third need is the need to be an insider. In psychology, they call it insider status. All right, that I'm on the inside, not on the outside. It's the opposite of us and them. It's just us. Okay. And the skill that leaders need to have is to be inclusive. So there's that word inclusive coming through again. Okay. And I put this model together in 2005, 2006, a long time before we started emphasizing the importance of inclusion. It was being emphasized then, but it's so much more important today. And what happens when people feel like they're an insider, that is, they feel involved, they're involved in decision-making and problem solving, their ideas are asked for. I'm on the same team as my boss, all right? And there's an increased level of commitment and engagement to the organization and to their manager, all right? So now the thing about this is that we can't just start at the need to be an insider. Let me get you involved in this, because if I haven't built the foundation, if people don't feel respected, they don't want to learn and grow from their manager, all right? They don't want to sit down with someone and be mentored by them if they know that that person doesn't respect them. All right. So to actually satisfy that need to be an insider, we really need to build that foundation of making sure everybody feels respected and we're giving everyone the opportunity to learn and grow. And then they can apply what they're learning to contributing more and feeling more like an insider. Okay. So where do we go from there? The next need is to do meaningful work. All right, so now that I'm more involved, I'm involved in decision making, I'm involved in problem solving, I'm involved in innovation. What are we doing with that? And meaningful work comes from primarily the organization's purpose. Now, I've included purpose, values, and vision there, but if people know that the work that they're doing is meaningful and it's making a meaningful difference to the stakeholders of the organization, then their work is more powerful to them. It's a much stronger emotion. And so we get that feeling of emotional connection with the organization. My organization is making a difference. We're doing something wonderful. We're making the world a better place for people. And I'm a part of that. I can see how I'm connecting to that. So you can see the passion building as these needs get satisfied. And then the last one is the need to be on a winning team. Everybody wants to be on a team that's being successful, that's kicking goals, that's that's making a real difference. And then they can see the difference, they can measure the difference. Okay, so the skill the leader needs to have there is to, how do you pull a group of people together and turn them into a high-performing team? All right, and it starts down the bottom there with, we need some people skills to build trust. We need to coach, counsel, and mentor them. We need to make sure everybody feels included. And we need to align everyone with the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the team. Why do we exist? Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. Okay, and that's the most important motivator for people. That's what really makes work meaningful. And so what we end up with is passionate employees. Okay, and so this is something that I came up with after doing some research back in 2005-06. Well, a bit before that, perhaps, I started, because I published the first version of the book in 2006. And then I developed a questionnaire. And in fact, it was the publisher of my book that came up with a suggestion of, because the book is largely written about these 5 needs and for leaders in terms of how to build a culture where these needs are satisfied, was to ask some questions to measure how passionate are you. In other words, how well are these needs being satisfied by you? So I published those in the back of the book. We subsequently put that online, and we've subsequently built it into an organizational survey. And since then, we've collected a huge amount of data in terms of how important these needs are to people and how well they're being satisfied. And I'll share some of that with you just a little later on. Okay, so while on the subject of passion, I just wanted to share another model with you that shows you that I'm not the only one that believes that passion in an organization is very important. All right, and so I'm going to share some information here with you from the book The Future of Management by Gary Hamel. Gary Hamel is highly regarded in the world as a thought leader on the subject of management. He's written several books, and he emphasizes management rather than leadership, because management is not just about managing tasks. It's about getting everyone on your team to perform at their best, and so achieving what they're setting out to achieve, right? So in the book, The Future of Management, he identifies 3 organizations who have exceeded way beyond their competitors in terms of creating value. The 3 companies were Google, which we all know. Another one is W.L. Gore, who are the creators of Gore-Tex. And Bill Gore, by the way, used to work for DuPont. And he came up with his creation of the material that would be waterproof, that could be used for so many different things. And DuPont weren't interested. So he left and started his own business, W.L. Gore, and of course been hugely successful. The other one was Whole Foods, which is a grocery chain in America. And if you haven't been to America and been to a Whole Foods, you've missed out on a shopping experience. They are truly amazing and beat their competitors hand down. But he did some research to say, well, what are the human capabilities that contribute most to value creation, to employees creating value for customers, clients, for the public, for the community, etc. And number 1 was passion. And he said that passion contributes 35% of value creation. All right. The next one is creativity, which is 25%. So passion contributes significantly more to value creation than creativity. But obviously you have to have the creativity too. And between the 2 of them, that's 60%. The third one is initiative, that's 20%. And then intellect, 15%, diligence, 5%, obedience, there's none left, that's 0, all right? So running a control-based organization where people have to do what they're told is not going to do anything to create value for anybody, okay? The other thing I'd like to point out here is that those first 5, including diligence, are all volunteering attributes or capabilities, right? You can't force someone to be passionate. You can't force someone to be creative. You can say, oh, give me some creative ideas, and the person doesn't want to, so they don't. All right. Same with initiative, same with intellect. how do you force someone to use their intellect? They just say, I don't know. I've got no ideas. And so if you want to create value or create a company, a culture where everybody's passionate about creating value, then we need to have a culture where people want to do these things. Okay, so I want to switch to the subject of belonging, because that's an important part of this culture of diversity and inclusion. And oftentimes we're hearing a culture of belonging and inclusion. Well, we found this bit of research from Harvard Business Review, and they say, to start off with, that social belonging is the fundamental human need hardwired into our DNA. And I would argue that the 5 needs that ignite passion are also hardwired, and that we all need those. And we can see later on just how much people do need those things. But what they say in this article is that, in a nutshell, companies are blowing it. US businesses spend nearly $8 billion a year on diversity and inclusion trainings that miss the mark because they neglect our need to feel included. Now, I know it's US data, couldn't find any on Australia. But I think it's significant amount of money being invested in diversity and inclusion training that is not helping people feel included. Okay. In fact, I think part of the article saying that 40% of people in organizations feel that they surveyed felt isolated. Okay. So one of the things that I think is a part of that, if we go back to the passion pyramid for a sec, is that we can put in place training and programs about inclusion and being an insider. But if people don't feel respected, if people aren't being invested in to learn and grow, then they're still not going to feel like an insider, even if we're spending money on training around that topic. Okay, so so that's, I think, a key factor. The other thing is that we need a high level of trust. And I'm going to introduce you now to the Intégro trust model. And I think some of you have seen this before. And we'll see how this ties in, because we've found from our research that if you want people to be passionate about your organization and about the work that they do, they need to have a high level of trust for the organization, for the leaders of the organization, because trust is a very powerful emotion as well, just like passion. Okay, so trust is at the heart of the model, of course, and this model was developed by Dr. Ralph Colby, one of the founders of Intégro, and he did some research to identify what does it take to build trust and sustain it long term. All right, and he identified 4 behaviors, and the first one is acceptance, and it's the least obvious one. You know, let's see as we build this up that you can see why perhaps it is the least obvious. And acceptance means who you are is okay with me, that I accept you for who you are. I'm not judgmental of you. All right. Now, if you think about people you've worked with who you had difficulty trusting, maybe it was because they were quite judgmental. And some people have grown up to believe that they have a right to point out people's faults. All right. What's wrong with that? You should know that you've got a fault there. You've got a weakness there. Why can't I point it out to you? All right. And you also know that if that's the kind of relationship you've got with them, then you're not going to be open with them. Why would I share information, especially personal information or information about myself, or admit that I'm struggling with something to someone who's going to judge me? All right. So acceptance is really the key starting point for building trust relationship. And the more accepted you feel, the more comfortable you will being open. Okay. And we all know that openness and transparency is a very important factor in organizational culture these days, that we need to build trust, not only with internal stakeholders, employees, but also external stakeholders like customers, clients, etc., suppliers. Openness, transparency builds trust. Okay. The third behavior that Ralph came up with was congruence, and we don't use that word a lot. And I think the best way to explain it is, if you can recall when you did geometry in school, when we did triangles, we had congruent triangles. Now, I didn't really remember what they were when I first saw this word, and Ralph was telling me this, but congruent triangles are triangles that have the same angles. So they're the same shape. One can be bigger than the other, but they're congruent because the angles are the same. So congruence is the same as, what I say is the same as what I really mean. In other words, I tell the truth. Or I practice what I preach, okay? What I do is the same as what I said I should do. So the same as is what congruence is. And then the fourth behavior that builds trust is the obvious one, and that's reliability. I do what I say I'll do. From a reliability point of view, not from an ethical point of view, which is congruence, okay? So they're the four behaviors. And I learned this, in fact, I learned this before I joined Intégro. I went to an Intégro sales training program where I learned how to build trust with customers. And this just blew me away. It was like my insurance company that I worked for was trying to teach me all these techniques to try to manipulate people into buying. And having been brought up by Salvation Army parents, that didn't feel comfortable for me. And then when I saw this model, I could understand why, because people will buy from me when they trust me. And so I need to behave in a way that builds trust. Okay. And so after working with this for 30 plus years, and our clients really saying, this is wonderful, Keith, I wish everybody would do this. But then they turn around and withhold some information from somebody, or not say what they really meant, or judge somebody. Okay. And so what I discovered was that these four behaviors are pretty obvious. And if you think about it, you think about relationships you've got where you've got a high level of trust. These four behaviors are happening in those relationships. If you've got a relationship where there's a lack of trust, or trust has been diminished a little, you can easily identify which of these behaviors is not happening to the degree that you would like it to be to build trust. Okay, so after 30 years of working with this, I decided that one of the reasons people weren't doing it was because it wasn't natural for them to do it, and if they were going to do it, they needed to do something different. And so I decided to add an outer layer to this, which are the values that build trust. Right. In other words, if I struggle with accepting people, if I tend to be pretty judgmental kind of person, then I am going to struggle to just accept people for who they are, right? I'm going to have trouble accepting things the way they are because I want them to be different, right? And so if I'm going to accept people, I need to believe it's important to respect them and give them the recognition they deserve, right? And so these are the values. Now, yes, they could be behaviors as well, but in the context of how I'm using this is, if I'm struggling to accept somebody, I need to step back and say, what do I respect about this person? What do I appreciate about this person and what they've done? And then how can I let them know that? When I let them know that, they'll be feeling more accepted by me. Okay. But if I don't stop and think and step back and focus on the values, I'm going to struggle with the behavior. With openness, the values are receptivity and disclosure. All right. If I struggle with listening to other people's ideas, and particularly listening to feedback from other people, then they're going to experience me as not being very open to feedback. And so if I'm going to be better at openness, I need to focus on, hey, it's important for me to listen to what other people have got to say. Some people struggle with disclosure, sharing information. And so if I'm going to be more open with information and meet people's expectations there, I need to believe it's important to disclose information that people would find valuable, even if they're not necessarily asking for it. Okay. In terms of congruence, the two values are straightforwardness and honesty. Okay, so there's a communication part of congruence, which is saying what I mean, meaning what I say, telling the truth, telling it how it really is. Jim Collins in his book Good to Great talked about confronting the brutal facts. All right, that's straightforwardness, okay, which is a big part of congruence. But also part of congruence is practicing what I preach. In America, people talk about walking the talk. All right, that is, do I do what I say I should do? All right, or do I have one rule for other people and a separate set of rules for myself? Okay, which would come across as not being totally honest and ethical. Okay, so if I'm going to be more congruent, and I have trouble giving bad news to people. I don't like to hurt people's feelings, but I also know that there are times when I need to be get straight to the point. It doesn't come easily to me, but I need to do that because I believe it's important. Okay, then I'll be better at congruence. And then reliability, the two values that I identified were keeping commitments and seeking excellence. That is, if I'm going to make a commitment, I need to believe it's important to keep that commitment. All right. Rather than being frivolous and say, yeah, I'll do that, I can do that, without stopping and thinking, can I really do all that stuff that I'm making a commitment to do? And then letting people down. All right. Seeking excellence was an interesting one. One of the things we found through our research is that pretty much everybody believes in doing the best that they can in everything they do. They don't want to do something half-hearted, right? They want to put their full effort into it. They want to do their best. So that's, you know, that you can rely on the most of people who always do what they say they're going to do, and they always do their best job for you. Okay, they're the most reliable people you know. Okay, so that's the Intégro trust model, and I wanted to build this into our assessment of organizational culture. And as you can see, acceptance is all about belonging, right? And inclusion. How do I know that I belong? Because I'm treated with respect. I'm given appropriate recognition. I feel that people accept me for who I am. I'm not experiencing any judgment. That doesn't mean I'm not experiencing any feedback about how I can improve my performance, but I'm not experiencing judgment about me as a person. All right. And so, so this model, the values that build trust and the Intégro trust model, is a key part of creating that healthy culture. Just think about this in the context of, say, a restaurant that you like, all right, and you go to regularly. Why do you go there? Well, they accept you, they recognize you, they call you by name when you go there. Oh, nice to see you back. Good to see you again, and they'll have a chat. They're open with you. They say, oh, look, I don't think that's the best meal tonight. I think I'd really recommend this. This is really good. They're straight with you if there's something that's not happening or if you're going to be delayed. They're honest and ethical in what they charge and their pricing, etc. And they deliver food in a timely fashion, and it's really top quality. Okay, why wouldn't you go back? Okay, and why you don't go back is because one of those things is missing. Right, if not more than one. Okay, so trust is key to our relationships, both at home but also at work. Okay, so what our research has shown us is that there's a chain reaction. The first thing we found, if we look at the needs that ignite passion that we looked at in the passion pyramid, when we satisfy those needs to a high degree, and I'll show you some stats in a little while, in an easy to read form, I might add, that the trust level goes up. In all of the organizations that we've surveyed, where we've surveyed the degree to which the needs are being satisfied and the degree to which employees trust their management, we have not found any organizations where need satisfaction is high and trust is low. Neither have we found a situation where need satisfaction is low and trust is high. It doesn't happen. There's a very strong correlation between the two. Now, that's good news also for your managers in that if they want to build trust, they need to focus on satisfying the needs that ignite passion. Treat people with respect, help them learn and grow, treat them as insiders, make sure that they can see that what they're doing is making a difference, and also build a high-performing team around everybody, okay? And then the trust level will go through the roof. Not only will the trust level go through the roof, the levels of passion will go through the roof. And we see that in our research as well. Much higher levels of passion when there's high need satisfaction and high trust, okay? Now, I said we don't measure engagement, which we don't, but it makes sense that if you've got a team of people that are passionate about what they do and about the organization they work for, you'll have very high levels of engagement, okay? So that's the key to creating a high performance culture, is an organization full of people who are passionate about what they do and about the organization they work for, all right? And so how do we measure passion? we've identified 5 levels or 5 types of employees, if you like. And we could have maybe added more, but I wanted to keep it fairly simple. And we actually ask employees, which of these descriptions best fit you? Are you passionate about the job you do and about the organization you work for? You feel valued and respected, and you know that what you're doing is making a real difference. And so if that's them, then they click on level 5 description, that description. The second option is people who are passionate about the job and they know that what they're doing is making a difference, but they feel somewhat disengaged from the organization, and primarily because they don't feel valued. In other words, they're not getting appropriate recognition and respect. Okay, they switch off emotionally from the organization. All right, so we call them a level 4 employee, passionate about what they do, but not about the organization. So they're more likely to leave, aren't they, if they were made a better offer, because there's no emotional attachment to the organization. They don't love coming to work, other than loving what they do, perhaps. Level 3 is an interesting one. It's people are passionate about the organization. They think it's a great organization, but they're not passionate about what they do. They find their work unrewarding. It's just a job. Okay. In terms of the next level, level 2 employees, we call them, they're not passionate about anything. So they're attracted to a description that says you're not passionate about the work you do or about the organization. And in fact, you feel somewhat disconnected from the organization, but you're still conscientious about doing a good job. All right. So we get a fairly small percentage of people who choose that. And then level 1 are people who feel disconnected from both the job and the organization. And if they could find another job, they would take it. Very small percentage of people who have completed our survey fall into that category. Okay. The vast majority of people fall into level 4 and level 5. And we've called this the emotional disconnect. So we've got 44% of people who identify them as passionate only about the job, and 34% who say they're passionate about both the job and the organization. So 44% of people are emotionally disconnected from the company. Okay, that's a pretty high risk. And that's overall over 6,000 employees that we've surveyed over the past several years. And but the good news is we've got 34% who are passionate about both, and they're going to be focused on making a difference. They're going to going the extra mile. You know those employees when you go into a hotel or an airline or on a flight, and you know the employees who love what they do and they just really want to make a difference. Okay, so why are level 5 employees so much more passionate about the organization than those at level 4? I thought that was an important question to answer. And so what we did, we got the psychometrician who did the psychometric analysis of our data for us to dig into how did the level 5 employees respond to the questionnaire? How did the level 4 employees respond? And what can we learn from what's the difference between level 5 and level 4? There were a few things that stood out, but the number one thing was recognition. All right. And that's one of the values that build trust. People get the recognition they deserve. Now, key term there, they deserve. They believe they deserve. If people are getting the recognition they believe they deserve, they are much more passionate about the organization than people who are not getting the recognition. And recognition doesn't have to cost anything. We're not talking about incentives and rewards here. We're talking about just basic recognition. People saying, you've done a great job. Thank you for that. We really appreciate what you're doing for us. Okay. And so, so let's just look at the survey that we've used. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I want to just share with you how we arrive at these results. So this is the front cover of the Employee Passion Survey report. And the first section is the passion pyramid. Okay. I've taken the extraneous stuff away from the side there. Now, what we do, we have 2 questions that measure each of these 5 needs. And we ask 2 questions about each of those 10 questions. The first question is, how important is this to you personally? And the second question is, how well is this need being satisfied? All right. And then we add up the scores for the 10 questions. And here's the sample. So there are 10 questions, and the personal importance score in this particular case is 94.4. Excuse me, that's an average of 9.44 per question in terms of importance on a 10-point scale. In other words, these needs are very important, right? Then how well is the need being satisfied? And in this case, the average score was 6.25 per question. All right, now obviously they vary a little bit. So this is the total score for the 10 questions. And so we have a gap score of 31.9 here. That's a very high level of dissatisfaction. Right? In other words, passion is low, and we will for sure see, and we'll see in the trust scores in a minute, that trust is also low, all right, because the needs are not being satisfied. It makes sense. If you satisfy people's needs, they trust you. You don't satisfy their needs, they don't trust you. I can't trust you to look after my needs, all right? So this is one example, and let's look at another example. Now here we'll see the importance score is 89.8. In actual fact, the average importance score for all 6,000 plus surveys we've done is 90, 90.03 to be precise, but it's 90 out of 100. Okay, so these needs are important to everybody. In this case, workplace satisfaction was much higher at 76.7, so the gap score was 13.1. Now that's not bad, but it's still only really average. I think the average for all organisations is 13.5. Okay. So we can measure the degree to which these needs are being satisfied, and then we're going to see how it impacts on the trust level. Okay, so here's the trust graph. The dots represent the importance scores. The coloured shaded areas represent the performance scores, because when the 8 questions that are asked about each of the 8 values that build trust is how important is this to you personally, and how well is your organisation operating by this value? What's the level of performance in using these values in the organisation? Okay, and again we add up the totals. So now there's 8 questions, so 8 9s are 72. So a score of 77.6 is about 9.5 per value. Okay, so that's, in other words, very important to everybody. Performance score only 46.3, and a gap score of 31.3 means an extremely low level of trust. Now that's the same group as had the big gap score on the employee passion pyramid. Okay, and so then we look at a better score. Okay, so importance score is down to 73 here, but the performance score is 61.2, leaving a gap score of 11.8. Now that's better than average. It's actually quite good. It means there's a fairly high level of trust, but it also could be higher. There's still some gaps there that that could be addressed. Okay, so within the last question we asked people is, how passionate are you? Remember the 5 descriptions, level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and this is a group that has a low trust level. There's only 20 people responded out of about 50 in this group. So that's an indication of a low level of trust to start with. They didn't trust the organisation to actually respond to the survey. And we had 4 people who identified themselves as level 5, 5 people at level 4, and then we had level 3. Remember, level 4 was passionate about the job, not about the organisation, emotionally disconnected. Level 3 was passionate about the organisation, not the job. Level 2, not passionate, but still conscientious. And in this case, we had 4 people who were looking somewhere else, level 1. And then the better results that we've been showing you obviously had a better result here too, with 36.8% at level 5. Still not great. It's only about average, but it's a big improvement on 25%, and much higher level of response this time. And this is the same group a couple of years later. So level 4, 41, level 3, 10%, level 2, 6%, level 1, 6%. Those are pretty normal percentages, about average percentages for those lower levels. As you saw earlier, overall over 6,000 employees, we had 44% at level 4 and 34% at level 5. Okay. Now, one of the things I mentioned was that when needs are satisfied, trust is high. when they're not satisfied, trust is low. Here's the results of that. This is how we know that. Okay, so down the left-hand side, you've got level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sorry, we don't have level 1. We didn't show level 1 because when they respond to the survey, they distort the data. Some people will put in 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for everything. Some will put 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. In other words, they're trying to sabotage the survey, so the results are a bit unreliable. But level 5 employees passionate about the job and the organisation, 86% need satisfied, 84% level of trust. Okay, significantly higher than the other 3 levels there. And what's really interesting, that level 4, which is passionate about the job but not the organisation, and level 3, passionate about the organisation, not the job, score pretty much the same overall in terms of need satisfaction and level of trust. In other words, it's not high. Okay, so the key to creating a high performance culture is to have as many level 5 employees as we can. How do we do that? Satisfy the needs. That will build trust and it will increase passion. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the results of an organisation we worked with. This is a 5-star hotel. And just 3 of the departments, because we can break the results down by department, and we can see the percentage of level 5 employees from year 1 to year 3 in each of these 3 areas. Conferencing, obviously, you've all been to a conference or used a meeting room and had catering and stuff like that. And then been to a restaurant, kitchen, food and beverage, maybe room service, and then housekeeping, the people who clean your room and make your bed. All right. So percentage of level 5 employees increased significantly in all 3 areas. And you might think that, yeah, that could be a bit healthy. Housekeeping is only 62%. But when you think about what housekeeping room attendants are doing, getting 62% up to feeling passionate about the job and the organisation is a pretty fantastic result. What was the outcome of that? Well, for conferencing, year 3 was a record year for both revenue and profit. For kitchen, food and beverage, retention rate more than 97%, which is unheard of in the last 10 years. In fact, in a couple of years before they started with us, they had almost 100% turnover in the kitchen. And they really dramatically reduced that down to 97% retention. And then housekeeping, or food and beverage, best profitability on record, and housekeeping, 96% retention rate. Now, if any of you worked with any hotels, you'll know that that's pretty much unheard of. And those people turn over quite regularly. But what happened here? They created a culture where there was a high level of need satisfaction, there was a high level of trust, and a greater sense of belonging and passion for the organisation. And people didn't want to leave. Okay. All right. So just moving into wrapping up, the Employee Passion Survey has a number of resources that we've developed. And one of those is what we call the development notes. All right. Now, I mentioned the 10 questions that we use to measure the need satisfaction, 2 for each of the 5 needs that ignite passion. And for each of those questions, we have development notes. So for the manager of a department, getting results from this that says that employees' needs are not being satisfied in this area of the need to learn and grow. All right. So what can I do as the leader of that department? Well, I go into the results for my department and I identify the items where we've scored lowest in satisfaction, and I go into the development notes and I can get a whole lot of information there about what I can do to increase our effectiveness in there. In other words, develop an action plan with hopefully the assistance of either someone internal or a consultant who's working with them to increase passion and trust. Okay, also on the development note side, for each of the 8 values that build trust, there was 1 item for each of those. And again, we have development notes for each of the 8 values that build trust as to what they can do to increase that. We also have a workbook. So when you debrief the survey with an executive team, you take them through the survey results, but you also take them through some activities in the workbook. to help them identify some things that they need to do to improve results. And there's also a facilitator's guide. If you were going to facilitate a team through that debrief, you've got all the facilitator notes and PowerPoint files and things to take them through the activities and help them come up with action plans. Okay. We also have a psychometric report. Okay. We use a psychometrician from the University Hobart, or no, it's in Launceston, but I think it's Tasmanian University of Tasmania. And Joey's got a PhD in psych, and he's been helping us to develop this. I just noticed that graphic there says Bachelor of Business. So that's what he had when we first started working with him, but he's since got his PhD. So we need to update that. And he and I jointly worked on putting this report together with all the stats. If you're really into stats, you'll enjoy that, and you can get that from Sue or from our website. We also have some white papers, Bridging the Employee Passion Deficit. Remember we looked at level 4 versus level 5 people, and that's what this white paper is about. Why people are passionate about their work, but not their employer, and what you can do about it. Okay. And there's also a white paper on trust model that's called Trust or Bust that I've written. And we'll be running a certification training for the Employee Passion Survey, how to use that and debrief it and facilitate development of action plans, etc. On the 26th of May. And for being on this webinar, you are entitled to a $100 discount on that. Okay. So I'm just going to, I need to now go up to the Q&A, don't I? See if we've got any questions. Okay, Sue's all over this. Okay. What is the main difference between the Employee Passion Survey and engagement surveys? My experiences with most engagement surveys is that they're measuring engagement, and a lot of it's more surface level stuff. And what I've seen is organizations call it an engagement survey, but it's really an opinion survey that's been modified a little bit. For example, one that I've seen had one question about trust. I am trusted was the question, right? In the Employee Passion Survey, we've got a whole section measuring trust at a very in-depth level, all right? And so it's sort of a bit like you go to a doctor, they put the blood pressure sleeve on your arm and they check your blood pressure and then your temperature and a few other things. And that's an engagement survey. And if you want to do the passion survey, you're going to the heart of things. So you're getting an ECG to really check out how healthy your heart is. And so that would be, I would say, the main difference. It's short. There's 22 questions. Doesn't take very long for people to complete, but it provides a real depth of powerful information, and especially around the need satisfaction levels and the trust levels, both of which have a huge impact on whether employees feel like they really belong, more like feel like they're really part of the organization. Okay, that need to be an insider is a key factor there. And what is included in the certification? It's a 2-hour webinar. There's some pre-work in terms of a recorded webinar we've put together to just give you an overview, followed by a 2-hour session being facilitated by myself, and there'll be some practical breakout room stuff in there as well. And then a follow-up one-on-one session with me of at least an hour to answer any questions you've got, and then ongoing support from us as you start using the passion survey with clients or internal people. And it includes the materials that I showed you just before, the facilitator guide, workbook master, so you can have your own details and logos and stuff on those documents, PowerPoint slides, and support videos that we've recorded in the past as well. Okay, well, no more questions. So thank you very much for joining us today. And if you do have any other questions, by all means, get in touch with us. You can see we have an email address down the bottom there, especially for this kind of work that we do, trust@integro.com.au. And on our website, integro.com.au/trustinside. You will find a lot of information there about the Employee Passion Survey. There's stuff you can download from there, but also the other 2 Trust Inside assessments that we have that we'll be in touch with you more about later. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you again soon.